Just
it's going to be
careful where you put your T-posts, candidates.
Yeah, indeed. Don't knock out water mains. It's especially when
It
it's freezing
wasn't a
cold
water
outside.
main. It was a sprinkler line. There's not literally millions of gallons flowing into the street here. It's not a water main.
There's a certain art. There's a certain art. Like it's you just. Welcome back to another episode of Seeing Red Podcast with your host Garrett Fulse. We're a Texas politics podcast, so of course we're going to have to talk to some Texas politicians today. We have a great episode. It was just a joy to interview with Representative Mitch Little. Came to fame as one of Ken Paxton's attorneys during the impeachment trial. Later became a rep on his own right during the contentious Republican primary last year. We dive in, we get deep, we make jokes at each other because he and I, we get into some Twitter spats occasionally. A lot of times we end up on not necessarily different sides of an issue, but like different prioritizations of different issues or how to fight on a given topic. And it was a fun conversation. I think anybody from all stripes of the Republican Party will enjoy kind of the back and forth. And I think anybody who follows Texas politics, regardless of partisan affiliation, will get some insights into, what we're thinking and how we're trying to push, our priorities. So that's what you have in store. It's going to start here in a couple minutes. Just while I got you right here, like and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. But if you're not listening on Substack, there's an extra half of the episode on Substack live right now. So make sure you like on Substack, subscribe on Substack. It's seeingredpodcast.substack.com. It's a free subscription. There is an option to donate if you'd like to. I'd highly appreciate it to make this a little bit easier on me. But if you join the Substack, you get an email every time we have a new post go up. You can go watch the episode right away in its full and its entirety. And if you're on the Substack, you go to the very end. There might be a completely secret new thing happening after the interview with Mitch Little. So I'd stick around. There's a lot of content here. This episode's going to be on your podcast platform is going to be about 35 minutes. It's about an hour and 30 minutes on the Substack. So go in, check it out. We're going to get started here with Mitch Little. This was recorded a couple weeks ago. It was actually recorded. The news of what happened in Utah happened minutes after he and I finished our recording. So keep that in mind. That topic doesn't come up because it hadn't happened when we recorded this episode. So, but that aside, enjoy the episode and thanks again for joining us. And we'll see you. We'll see you on the other side. We have Representative Mitch Little joining us today from District 65, representing Denton County. Thank you so much for joining us today, Representative. This is your second time on the show. Thank you for coming back.
I'm hoping there will be a third. I will do my absolute best not to mess this up any worse than I did the first time. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. You came to prominence before you were even in the legislature from the state capitol itself, from the halls of the Capitol. You now call your office as one of the attorneys for Attorney General Ken Paxton in his impeachment trial. You even kind of have a nickname on Twitter, like Little Easel Pad, because of your famous moving of the Easel Pad around during that stuff. So anytime we can get a Twitter celebrity on the podcast, we're going to take our chance to do it.
If I had known that was going to become a meme, I've questioned whether I would still have done it, whether I would have moved the Easel Pad. And, being new to politics and that entire Capitol scene, I did not know what a vulnerability I was creating by walking around with a blank sheet of paper. But Briscoe knows. Briscoe said, "Don't take a blank sheet of paper anywhere; it will immediately become a meme."
Or as President Trump has realized, it doesn't even have to be blank. People will just if you just hold up a piece of paper. Hey, I'm holding something up right now. Somebody will edit in a piece of paper. You just got to be careful with all of it. But before. There's not a lot of impeachments that happen all the time. You don't come up just, being an impeachment lawyer. You came up as, I believe, a civil litigator. Is that correct?
A very niche practice, the impeachment.
Yeah.
Once every 50 years, they just knock the dust off of those people.
Yeah.
I do business litigation. I've done that for the last 21 years, and I still like it. Still like trying cases.
That's awesome. What would you say? Did you have to were the biggest advantages to have being a litigator when you step into the Capitol as a legislator? Like, I feel like most people who come in, they have to take about a full session to really get get experience before they start doing stuff. You seem to hit the ground running. I think the only people who really do are typically some lawyers, and then people who've been staff in the Capitol before because they kind of have the experience to get off the ground. Other people are just it's gonna take a year or two to kind of get going. What is that experience, and why do you think that you were able to, start moving when some of your other fellow freshmen didn't?
I don't know that I would compare myself to any of them. I can tell you it did not feel like hitting the ground running for the first 60 days. The first 60 days of session is literally one continuous meeting with people in your office, like activists, lobbyists, constituents, and all that. And for the first 60 days, I was telling my wife, I've made a huge mistake. I do not belong here. This is a gigantic waste of time. And then once we started in actually hearing bills on committee, it started to feel familiar to me. I could read, ask good questions, and it felt like learning, which I like to do. And I like to read and learn, and I was learning a new skill. And then when we got onto the floor, Garrett, it was you kind of feel like a fish out of water because the procedural rules are unlike being in a courtroom. And so to keep myself from getting bored at the beginning of the session, I was trying to teach myself the procedure of the House as fast as I could. I was killing bills just to see if I could do it. And sorry, Chairman Meyer. I mean, I killed one of his bills early on in the session, and it goes back to committee and through calendars, and he ended up getting the bill back through. Another one I just killed dead right there, but I was trying to learn by doing. It's generally that's what works the best for me. So it felt there's a steep learning curve at the beginning, trying to understand how the rules really work in real life, how the parliamentarian reads them. And then you read the precedents and think you understand it, and no, you don't actually. But the thing that really, really helped me was Briscoe Kane, who is he knows more about the rules than anybody in the chamber, I think. Maybe other than Cody Basut. They're probably tied. He helped shepherd me to an understanding of how things worked, and he kind of held my hand through it at the beginning until I could function on my own. And that to me was fun. I started having fun, and once I start having fun, dangerous things happen. So I got to the point where I was enjoying it.
What are unobvious ways, you with a legal training, you're used to reading briefs or writing briefs or going through, like you said, the archaic precedents and all that sort of stuff, the thinking you have an understanding, whatever else. Obviously you have a training for that and 20 plus years of experience having done similar type work. What are ways which your practice or your professional career or just your personal life prepared you to be a state representative, even if it took you 90 days for it or whatever, for it to kind of really start showing that experience was going to be helpful going forward?
Yeah. Being able to argue without things getting personal, that really helped. I mean, that's my whole life really, is arguing with people about facts and law. And so when you get to the floor, what I realized is there was a lot of emotion in that chamber by a lot of different people. And so it's a really emotionally charged place. There were a couple of late nights where we had a couple of old guy fights that were about to start and got stopped very quickly. And I'm generally not that way. I don't get emotionally bothered by arguing about stuff. And so where I found I could fit into the action was, you take a bill that's okay, and just by changing a word here or there, taking out a sentence, adding a sentence, you can make it better, you can make it stronger, you can make it more effective, more conservative, and pull the bill to the right. And I was just trying to learn how to affect the ball while it was in flight. So you've got bills that are coming through the chamber. You might, on a given day, you might have anywhere between 20 and 100 bills on the floor, and you pick your targets. You decide which ones you're going to try to impact or affect, because you can't do it all. If you try to affect every bill, everybody starts tuning you out. And so it's a delicate process of trying to use your voice and use your skill set in a way that's effective and impacts what you're doing. Because if you're just talking on everything or griping about everything, everybody just kind of shuts you down, tunes you out.
Well, I will take us back to our last conversation, and we were talking about the contract with Texas a little bit. One of the things you mentioned in that conversation was you thought that the 60-day kind of starting period was too much, and you should just get the ball rolling. Do you still think that after you saw how that 60 days is used, you think it should at least be shortened, or
even more so, Garrett? So that first 60 days, for those of you, for your listeners who don't really understand the pace of a legislative session, what's supposed to be happening is the speaker's selecting who's on what committees, and he's referring bills on first reading to committee. But I could have just completely done without the first 60 days. Like, let's refer bills. Let's have committee hearings starting, week 2, or as far as I'm concerned. And the reason is there is a lot of wasted energy. So for that first 60 days that, is a constitutionally protected period that the Senate completely ignores, and they're having hearings and ripping bills right and left. I'm there Monday through Thursday or Tuesday through Thursday or whatever. They adjourn and they take 3-day weekends, etc. That felt like a waste of time to me. Like I'm just away from my family and my law practice, and we're not accomplishing anything. So what happens is, with that 60-day period, that 60-day delay, you end up cramming bills into the end of the session, like May of the session, where you are literally going 24/7, the entire month. And so that becomes exhausting. Mistakes get made. You end up going faster than you need to. And a lot of this stuff is high priority stuff too. And so it ends up getting rushed at the end. Don't really love that. I still feel like we should get started faster if we can.
Well, my kind of, I'm indifferent towards the 60-day thing. Like, it's there. There's ways the Senate kind of has ways to get around it. I don't think it should be like a mandatory 60 days. I don't think you're going to see a lot of change if you got rid of it, if only because a deadline makes people actually move. Part of that reason why everything gets pushed to the last second is you have 150 people trying to move against each other and sometimes moving with each other, and it's just, there's all that madness. I do think it was something more unique in this one, is that Speaker Burroughs kind of got grief for taking a little bit longer than the previous session for getting those assignments done. But what I looked back and saw was that you had a far more freshmen than previous years that needed to find homes on different committees. Yes. You had a number of freshmen replacing older, more seasoned or experienced folks in the given seat, which means those seniority changes on those committees. So like all sorts of people like with seniority wanted to move to better committees or different committees. You get a lot of madness in this one. I don't think we'll see as much of a delay with the ability to kind of start taking up the governor's priorities in the next session, assuming we have the same speaker. But anytime you have a speaker change like that, and so much change within like the caucus or the House itself, I think it's reasonable to let them take a beat to make sure they get the committee structures right. Because one of the biggest complaints I hear now is like, oh, the State Affairs Committee was able to kill so many bills. It's like, well, maybe if you had another week, you would have been able to figure out a way to make that happen. Or not make that not happen. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, it's a very convoluted process to be able to get everybody on committees where they're supposed to be. And I was very happy with the committees I was on. I served on criminal jurisprudence, which is where I wanted to be, and transportation, which turned out to be a great committee. I learned a lot, but it's a lot of work for a speaker, and he doesn't know that he's going to be speaker until the first day of the session, right?
Right.
And so as far as I could tell, the speaker's staff was almost unaffected in large part by the change from Phelan to Burroughs. Is the staff that was working for him was almost identical, with the exception of Robert Duncan and Zach Kovar. So
Right.
there was some natural carryover, but Speaker Burroughs also had the difficulty of replacing all the Democrat chairs too with Republicans, and trying to figure out who falls into which piece. So I understand it's challenging. I hope we can get started a little faster next time.
Like I said, I think we will. I think, like, there's like you mentioned, that was another factor. There's all those factors went into it. But even with all that, some of the freshmen struggled to even get a hearing on a bill, or they even got the bill to the floor and it failed. You were able to get a pretty big piece of legislation through all the way to the governor's desk and signed in HB 4623. Do you kind of want to explain to the viewers like what that bill does and how it does it, and what the purpose of that bill was?
Yeah, of course. So 4623 is a bill that I wrote. You can tell that it was a late idea because of the bill number. So the bill number is very high, 46.
I wasn't going to tell people that. I was going to let that just be there, but
no, yeah. Well, let me explain how that happened. The bill itself was almost an afterthought. So I came into the session, I had some bill ideas. I filed bills that had lower numbers. And during that 60-day window, when I was meeting with people, I went to David Lowe's office, and Mike Morath was there with us. And I had some big questions about the referral of the sexual abuse cases in our school system and what's going on with them at an investigative level. And I left the meeting and I said to my office, who's carrying the bill to remove sovereign immunity from schools for child sexual abuse? And they go, no one is. I said, well, I am then, and let's go write the bill. And so the purpose of House Bill 4623 was to remove sovereign immunity from schools such that victims and their families of child sex abuse can bring a lawsuit in district court against the school for its actions in either negligently permitting or engaging in this form of abuse. Mm-hmm. It's rampant in our school systems. There's literally thousands upon thousands of cases of abuse from teachers and school personnel. And so that bill gets filed, and I think that is never going to see the light of day. Well, Jeff Leach and the speaker pulled that bill out of the pile and decided to give me a hearing. We had a great hearing in Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence Committee with Chairman Leach. He allowed me to advance it. And I thought that was so nice of him to give me a hearing, but that bill is never going to get to a calendar. Bill goes to calendars. I asked them to put it on the calendar, and it gets the calendar. Chairman Leach and I go and have a meeting with the speaker and says, we're gonna get your bill to the floor. And no one was more shocked than I was that it was going to happen.
So you need to be ready.
Yeah, you need to be ready. And so we're going to get to it either Sunday or Monday. I think we ended up getting to it on like a Tuesday or something. And the bill had a great hearing on the floor. It sailed through the House with, a negligible number of no votes. It goes over to the Senate, and the Senate gave it a good hearing. I was skeptical they were going to hear it. Angela Paxton carried it for me in the Senate, and the bill ended up getting modified. There was a floor substitute or floor amendment, and it weakened the bill somewhat. And I think the school lobby got after it and changed.
Didn't it lower the threshold from like $1 million to 500,000?
I came out of the House with 500,000, so there was a cap on it, but it changed the liability threshold from negligence on the part of the school district to basically recklessness or gross negligence or intentional conduct on the part of the school district. So still a move forward. And I can tell you, Garrett, that bill got signed by the governor, praise God. And then I'm seeing the action online with even today. So today I got up and I was looking on Facebook. Somebody tagged me in an article. A school district immediately fired a teacher this in the last few days. So the bill goes effective September 1st. School district is so concerned about the potential liability from the sex abuse stuff that it has moved to a zero tolerance atmosphere at these schools. It's like, bang, let's get the teacher, the coach, whoever out of the school district. Let's do an investigation. That's what we needed all along, because I think what was happening was sex abuse of children was thriving in schools because the schools were not incentivized to either investigate it or solve the problem themselves. It gets referred out to local law enforcement. It gets referred out to internal law enforcement at the school district, or they send it off to the TEA. And these cases were coming down the conveyor belt and they were not getting dealt with. And so I'm prayerfully hoping that this is going to have a significant impact on our schools.
So what are other? So the way I thought it would also work wasn't just from the, the more risk averse, to put it for lack of a better term, administrators being proactive on it, but it would also be from insurance carriers basically saying, if you don't put in these policies, you're not going to be able to be covered by our insurance policy whatsoever, or your premiums are going to go through the roof, and that there would be a secondary pressure on school districts as well. Have you started to see any of that going on yet, or is it, since it's so new, it's not first?
They had to go out and get insurance to cover it, like immediately effective to be there September 1 to cover their claim that might ultimately come through the court system. So that was good. One of the criticisms we heard of the bill while it was going through committees and on the floor, et cetera, was, oh, well, the taxpayer is just going to end up paying for this anyway. And my response is, okay, so you mean as opposed to the victims and their families paying for it in a way that is totally unaccountable. And so the way that I explained it on the floor, look, they're going to have to go out and take out insurance to deal with this problem. And as far as I know, they have. But if you could see behind the scenes what was going on when the bill left the House, I don't think, first of all, the school districts did not see this bill coming, because how could they? I didn't even see it coming, that it was going to get through the House. And so once they go, oh, that came out of the House and now it's on the Senate floor, what was going on?
And it moved through the Senate pretty fast, too.
It had to, because it was so late in the session. And so the school districts kicked into gear. The general counsel, or the in-house counsel at a lot of these school districts, started writing on the bill, meaning they were writing amendments, trying to gut it, trying to get it over to their senators to get the bill disrupted. And I definitely took some names down on that deal.
Well, it's always good to have a list. Or it's not necessarily good to have a list, but whenever you work in politics or in the building long enough, you end up having a list.
You just remember. You file it away. Yeah.
A long memory a lot of folks have over there. Well, one of the things that you were also beyond 4623, we kind of touched on the procedure earlier, but you end up, you had a bill amendment in the last special session. I'm trying to recall what it was on, but I recall the back and forth being pretty. You had an amendment PO'd, right? So you refiled while it was. So point of order, you figured out it was going to be successful. So you wrote a second amendment fast enough where it was still germane. You got rid of the problem, and then you re-argued it. And then you had somebody going up there. You had Representative Dutton going up there. It's like, it just seems like you just try to get around it. It's like, yeah, I don't see there's going to be any issue with this now because it's not the same problem as before.
Well, I'm like, that's what we do here is we try to get around the germaneness issue when you amend something. And the bill, I know the amendment you're talking about. So Matt Shaheen was carrying the bill to prevent fundraising to support a quorum break. Right. And that happened late in the special session. And it caught within the scope of the bill individual members and what are called specific purpose committees under the election code. And the problem I was having is I'm reading the news, and Beto's PAC, Powered by People, was giving money to legislative caucuses so that they didn't have to deliver it straight to a member and deal with the legislative bribery issue that was potentially there. So I'm like, there's a massive loophole that's not being captured in this bill. So the amendment was to add legislative caucuses to the bill. And I would love to take credit for the revised amendment that actually went on, but I did not write it. So
you didn't have enough time to do it from the front dais. Or the front
no, I didn't. Somebody gave me some help with that, which I was very appreciative of. But the other thing that people don't understand or are not aware of who follow the legislature is everything that we're doing in the floor action generally is running through what's called legislative counsel, who's drafting amendments and things like that for us on the floor. So I had told legislative counsel that I wanted this amendment to the bill. They gave me an amendment, and it was an absolute dumpster fire. And I got it. I got it at like, let's say we were starting at 12, Garrett. I got the amendment at like 12:02, and I'm like, I'm so screwed. And so what I did was I went over to that little desk that sits up there to the left of the dais, and I said, this is jacked up. Write it exactly the way I'm about to tell you. And I wrote an asterisk on the bill. Give me this. Are you sure that's what you want? Yes, I'm sure. Just give it to me. And so another 10, 15, 20 minutes screen by. And so the point that I'm making to you is things are very nip-tuck in the chamber when you have a bill on the floor that you're trying to amend. There was at least one time during the session where I had an amendment being drafted and the bill goes on, passes before I can get ledge counsel to give me the amendment. And so you have to be on, totally focused.
Now you have to remind me, because I have to. Does the stuff have to go through ledge counsel? Like it's required by rule that ledge counsel has to at least see the draft, or can you just write?
That's not required, but it is so challenging. It's more challenging than you think.
Oh, no, I know. Oh, no, I get
it. And so I've written amendments myself, but it is more challenging than you think. Insert the words, and you've got to, you have to write it just right. It's like computer code. Insert, and after this word on page 2, line 14, and then you're just like, you're trying to be as precise as you possibly can. And so this is part of the learning curve. If you want to get in the game, you have to know how the game's played. You have to understand the rules and the process. And it became fun after a while. I'm like, oh, I can do this. I can be good at this.
Little cat and mouse there, and sometimes you're the cat, and sometimes you're the mouse.
That's right. That's right.
Well, we'll cover one more segment before we kind of split off here for a second, which is school choice was the big thing before from the last session that didn't get done. It obviously drove a lot of the change in the chamber from on one level or another, and it moved through the chamber a little bit more quickly than some people expected. Thinking a lot of people thought it would be held until later. Most people thought it would get done, but it would be held until later so it could be used as bargaining chip. It passed pretty quickly. From your view as a freshman who, that played a part in your primary, I presume, but what was that like, seeing that large of a bill being pushed through, and what kind of, what did you see happening, and then what did you learn from just being involved with that?
So that's what I would call an enterprise level bill. And from the time you walk in on January 14th until it passes, everybody's talking about it. And so when the bill finally gets filed, Garrett, the bill is massive. And I shouldn't say that. I think it was like 28 pages, something along those lines. And so I really wanted to read it and understand it before it came to the floor, before I signed on to it. So I was the 75th person to sign on to the school choice bill, which I think was HB2. So so Burroughs, I think, was 76. And that was when Abbott announced that he had the votes to pass it. And there was a lot of pressure on me. You need to co-author this. You need to co-author this. And I said, well, I want to read it. It's just like 2 or 3 days after it had been filed. And so just to give you, here's a funny example of the psychology of the legislature, Garrett. The first time we heard of the bill was in a House Republican caucus meeting that took place after the floor action. It had been filed that morning. Okay. And so the bill comes through the House Republican caucus, and the co-author sheet is there. Buckley's got the co-author sheet, and he's passing around the caucus, and people are signing onto it. And I'm like, no one in here has read this bill. No one. And by the time the caucus meeting was over, there's probably 60 signatures on the bill. I'm like, no one has read this bill. And so I wanted to at least read it before I signed on to it. And fortunately,
such a lawyer.
I know. I think at a minimum, that's what people ought to expect me to do. I was like, as a lawyer, there is no way I'm gonna sign on to this without reading it. So,
Yeah, makes sense.
and there are people like, what are you gonna do? You're just gonna read every bill before you sign on to it? I'm like, yeah, I might. I might.
Most of them
So
were real short, or they only changed like a couple of words over. It's not. Most of them are real short. It's the long ones that like just. Yeah.
But that was only the beginning of the pressure campaign, though. So it's the push-pull that was going on in the Republican Party, the grassroots conservatives over that bill.
How do you think it would have passed as quickly if President Trump hadn't got involved?
Yeah, I do, because there was so much shrapnel from the previous legislative session and the primary that everybody's like, we're doing this. I mean, I think who was the only no vote? Wasn't there a Republican no vote or two? Is Phelan and Harrison maybe?
I don't know if Harrison.
No, Harrison signed on to it, but I think Phelan and Darby maybe didn't.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to slander anybody. I know Phelan.
I know Phelan didn't. He publicly just was like, he just doesn't write this. He doesn't. He was more like I don't like how this bill looks type thing. But I think there was one or two more. I think it was like 85 total.
Yeah,
I have to go back and look.
Yeah, it was really close. Okay, so almost every Republican was on the bill, but there was a lot of tension from the Republican conservative grassroots going, this is not what we ordered, which is we wanted universal school choice with no strings attached. And so where I landed on it is, this is at the end of the day a government program. Like it is not going to be a panacea for all of education's ills, and it's also not going to be perfect because guess what? It's promulgated by the government. Okay, so but pretty good step forward, I thought. Pretty good step forward. I think we will have some good success stories out of that. But boy, did the Democrats hate it. How long did we debate that sucker on the floor? 8 hours, probably.
Oh, it was a long time. Yeah,
Lord knows it was until after midnight, I think, wasn't
it? That one, I think so. I would have to. And it was SB2 because the HB2 was the
funding bill.
With a funding bill, that's right.
That's right. You're right about
that. I was trying to look it up real fast. I don't think I'm going to get there quite in time. But votes.
Yeah, I think it was 28 pages, but it was
second, third reading on the floor, 8661. All right, I'm not going to scroll through.
Does it have a timestamp on there? It was almost like budget night. It went late, as I recall.
It went quite late. But no, it does. I mean, what the program I'm looking at doesn't have it. It might have it on TLO. And by the way, if you're listening and you're listening to us talk about certain things, TLO is an easy resource online to go back and look and see how any bill happened. And if you're watching it during a session live, if there's a bill you care about, you can get alerts sent to your email. So if you're looking to kind of follow along, to have a better idea of what's going on, TLO is a really great resource that's provided by the state to help follow along the legislature.
Yep.
Well, I think, the ESA fight was interesting for a lot of different reasons. I kind of thought it was going to go longer and then it might end up still dying. And I learned my instincts were wrong real fast when the 75 and 76 came out. And it was like, oh, this is just done. Now it's just rearranging, a couple commas here and there just to make sure that the bill is better.
You may be right that Trump impacted that more than I realize. I mean, in some ways, it's like survivorship bias. Like I'm thinking to myself, the bill passed because everybody liked it, because I liked it, and so there may be a bunch of Republicans who are going, I don't want to get on the wrong side of Trump on this, and Trump is very loud. So I don't know how everybody else thought about it. I just kind of like the bill.
Well, I think part of it was we went from this last one where everything was up in flux. It was all about your vote on the Darby Amendment I think it was the Darby Amendment from the 88th, the last special session, to not everything, but a lot of it was around that, to the president of the United States, who's very, 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 very popular within our party because he's our nominee and our president, and the governor basically saying, I'm going to endorse you if we pass this and you vote for it. He's like basically saying, like, I'm not going to do what I did to you last time, and you'll have our support. Like, that is like, oh, like, that is that it's not legislative bribery, it's legislative negotiation, but it's bare knuckle stuff. It's politics at its most political.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. That's how it
And
happens.
some will say that it's at its worst, depending on whether they wanted the school choice bill or not or not. But you're in it long enough, you're going to see it pretty much once a session. It's always interesting to see what it'll be. This time we knew it was going to be school choice. But I think since school choice had already happened, it kind of led it down the road when the weed stuff, the THC bills were happening, where the Dan Patrick tried to do it again at the end. Everyone was just kind of like, you don't have that gun in that bullet in the chamber anymore, and
right.
this, you're trying to push through something that, let's just. And the House kind of got on board, but eventually the grassroots came up and said that bill as written is terrible. So the governor had to end up vetoing it. So I thought that was interesting to kind of see how the pressure from different places, whether it's from Washington or from the grassroots or from other electeds in Austin, can really impact whether or not the stuff actually happens at the end of the day. And you don't really know it's done until it's signed. And sometimes you don't know it's done until the court says it's good too.
That was a really contentious thing after the fact. So when we had the THC bill on the floor, everybody's pretty unified about what we wanted to do about it. But after the fact, this Republican libertarian schism thing that we have going on in our party, that kind of drew the issue out like an astringent. Like, the libertarians went bonkers and worked Governor Abbott really hard. Anyway, it felt like we were all on the same page right up until Governor Abbott vetoed it. And then everybody goes, oh yeah, maybe we need to rethink this.
And you don't necessarily know why something is happening or where the pressure is coming from necessarily on anything. Because on something like that, where it seems like it's coming from the grassroots, for me, like, on both sides, it felt like, oh, the grassroots, like, social conservatives want to just ban weed, fine. And then on the other side, the libertarians are like, want to smoke weed, okay, that's fine. But kind of at both levels, there you could also see certain industry groups pushing the levers different ways because it benefits them to ban weed or to make sure weed's legal. And it's just kind of interesting to see how those public affairs and PR campaigns started to work their way, whether the people who were posting and pushing realized they were being influenced by those campaigns or not. It's always kind of hard to say whether something's like grassroots or AstroTurf on something.
Garrett,
like that.
Almost all of the action in the legislature is driven by someone's greed.
Oh yeah, or vanity.
And so what was fascinating was you could see the online social media movement around the THC issue, and you can tell that it was not authentic. There are some people who are very sincere who were posting, but there was a lot of manufactured content about it too. I mean, there was a lot of money involved in that decision and that bill. And so
from both sides,
no doubt. And so
a lot, like billions.
You could feel the pressure kind of mount on social media to the point where you're getting unrelated THC replies and posts on everything that you're writing on social media.
Yeah,
it was wild.
The bot campaigns, when you start getting involved with it, can be crazy because the bots don't. I always love when the bots confuse this random folks like me or like journalists as reps, which is like why Brad Johnson's running for 151 or whatever. That's an in joke because there's only 150 rep seats. So the joke is he's running for District 151. For those who needed to be explained the joke, there's a reporter who constantly gets attributed as a representative himself because he's constantly covering the ledge. But
it's always funny when like very niche things that happen online for very two online people become mainstream. Like even the governor was talking about it in his press conference the other day.
Yeah.
Brad Johnson running for District 151 or whatever. It's amusing. It's fun.
I think it's a way for us to stay sane, honestly. Like without some of the anonymous accounts, Not all of them, but one of the distinct ones where it's like, okay, let's just add some levity to the air. But with that, we might talk a little bit more about some of those accounts, or we'll drill down even more into some of the particulars for the second half of the show, which if you want to go over to our Substack, it's free. It's available right now. And next week, if you want to see our episode a day early, if you're a paid subscriber on Substack, it'll come out a day before. But
I'm delivering all of the goods on Substack. So all of the really interesting stuff is going to happen on your paid content.
It's been great already. All right. So I don't know. We're going to have to really amp it up here.
This is the bad part. We're going to get to the good part that's paid.
But I'm saying it's just going to be somehow it's going to be even better. So we'll see you over there in a couple of minutes. Just go to the Substack link at the top of the bio here on YouTube or on your podcast platform, and you can watch the rest of this here now. Do you have anything you want to plug, for your social medias or anything?
Well, if you really want to go down that dark rabbit hole, my Twitter X account is @RealMitchLittle. I don't know that it's plug worthy, but if you like crap posting and my particular stream of content, that's where you'll find it.
Okay. I do. I've been a long time follow. Well, Representative Mitch Little from HD65 up in the Denton County area. Thank you so much for joining us today for Seeing Red. And, hopefully we'll earn your subscription. But otherwise, to those watching, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.